So, hi everyone. Tonight I'm going to talk about Android XR, which you may or may not know anything about. So, XR, firstly, why have we got another acronym in this world? It stands for Extended Reality, apparently. I think it just sounds cool, and that's why they chose to use XR. Android XR was announced in December 24, and I thought to myself, this would be a really good topic. It'll be really good around this time of year. We've got Google I/O coming up with lots of good stuff. I'll be able to write a really good talk. I'll be able to, make a good app to show you all. And then there was not much more announced since then, unfortunately. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Android XR is and what we know so far, but expect a lot more in the future, at least I hope, because it sounds pretty cool. But we're still waiting to hear a lot of news from Google. Of course, everyone wants to know about hardware whenever we talk about augmented reality. And so, of course, there's going to be some headsets, very similar to something else. This is Samsung's Project Muhan, which apparently is going to be launched this year. And yeah, it's quite familiar if you had a look at the products from Apple. Yeah, not much difference there, but a headset is a headset, I suppose. But what I'm more excited about are the glasses that are coming out. And prior to this month, we really didn't have much information about them. They were just coming soon. But just recently, there's been a bit more information on this. So Samsung has Project Heian, whatever that is, and that is apparently some smart glasses. They said launch at the same time as the headset, but there's less information about that one. Google have said that they want to have lots of choices and stylish options for users to use with these new glasses. I'm really hoping they're going to be stylish and light, that I can wear them every day, but we've got to fight with battery life for that. These are some schematics from the Samsung patent. That's all the information we have on those so far. Until like the week before last, when Google showed off some of their smart glasses at TEDx Vancouver. So they did a few little demos. These glasses looked pretty nice. We can hope that they come out and they're affordable and actually usable, but not much more information. What I'm more going to talk about is software. And as a software engineer, this is where I really care about a lot more. And I think what Google is really championing compared to the hardware of other manufacturers. They're really focusing on how we can build apps, what we can do with this technology, and leaving the hardware up to Samsung and other manufacturers to worry about. So Android XR ecosystem. So there is something called the OpenXR specification. And the idea behind this is that if you're building something for AR, there's a specification that you can work towards. And that way, all the apps you're building are going to work the same way. So there's an OpenXR specification. I believe Meta also subscribes to OpenXR specification. You can use Android, Jetpack Compose, AR Core, and Scene Core. So if you're starting to develop for Android XR, it might be pretty familiar if you're already an Android developer. You can also use Unity, OpenXR, which is a C and C++ library, and WebXR if you prefer to develop in those sort of platforms. And most Android apps that already exist are already compatible with Android XR. You don't need to do anything different. Most of the time. I did test it with some apps that my company's developing. The one I was working on worked fine. The one somebody else who's a GDE at Android, who people may know, his app did not work. It crashed. But for the most part, pretty much all the apps will work with Android XR out of the box. You can distribute your apps for the phone, tablet, and XR, or just make it an XR dedicated app. So if you just want to make something that's just for the augmented reality, you don't have to worry about the phone or tablet experience. Or you can build for all of them together, and I'll demonstrate that later. So some of the concepts for the input. We have hand tracking, of course, voice tracking, eye tracking. I'm super interested to see how eye tracking works. There's not much information on this yet, but I'm very keen to see it. Keyboard and mouse, and controllers as well. Again, we don't have much information on that one either. The big thing they're pushing is gestures. So this is a demonstration from Marcus Brownlee. He managed to get access to that Samsung headset and did a nice little demo with it. It's also demoed in that TEDx talk as well. But as we can see, we're using our hands to move around the space and open apps and things like that. As I mentioned, I'm really keen to see eye gaze interaction. What Google's really pushing is the Gemini integration. So unlike other headsets, Gemini is a first-party integration. So it's the AI assistant to use with all of the AR experiences. You can use multimodal input, like in this example where he's looking at some shoes and asking it to say where can he buy these shoes. You're asking questions about surroundings and use things like circle to search. In that TEDx video, they even did a demonstration where the person looked at a bookcase and then turned in the other direction and asked Gemini about what had been seen, which was pretty cool because it meant that the glasses in this case had been watching and recording what was being seen, so you could ask it questions later. You didn't have to be actively looking at the item, which is pretty cool. And of course, you can use voice to control Gemini and control other apps. So developing for Android XR. There's some concepts that we need to get in our heads first. So we can have an XR-compatible mobile app. So if we have a look on here, it's just sitting in space. It's a regular app just for the phone. We have our compatible large screen app. So if we do have a large screen version of our app, we can show it in that in the XR space. And then we have an XR differentiated app. So this is where we've added some extra things like this 3D model of a shark. We've added extra panels, and I'll show a little bit more about this later. So we've really taken the time to add extra features to the app. If you want to develop for Android XR, you do need a fairly powerful machine. Excuse me. I had a laptop before the one I'm currently using, and it was not even powerful enough to run Android XR. So you do need to have an M1 machine if you're using a Mac or a fairly powerful Windows 11 machine. And the latest Android Studio if you want to give it a go. And it's still a little bit flaky, as you'll probably see in my demo later. So some of the other concepts we need to think about. We've got Android Studio, which allows us to give us an emulator to test apps. We do not need to have a physical device. In fact, I don't have a physical device yet, and it might be a while till we get them here, especially in Australia. But we can use the emulator to test everything that we need. We also have Jetpack Compose for XR. So this is giving us specific Jetpack Compose APIs that work in a AR world. So new concepts that you might not see before. So we have new layouts, preset layouts, and spatial UI. AR Core for Jetpack XR. So that's specific things that allow us to interact with the real world. We've got Scene Core, which is building things into that real world with those 3D elements. We also have Material Design for XR, so the same material design that we use in our apps can also be used in the augmented reality world. The idea behind this is having a consistent experience between all your devices. And 3D tools as well. If you really want to get into the game design or model design, you can use things like Blender to build your 3D models. Designing for Android XR, they've got a whole bunch of design guidelines online, but what they want is for you to follow established patterns. So follow what your current apps are doing. Don't make it surprising to the user, make it easy for them to use. A key thing is also feeling comfortable and safe. If you've ever played with some of these headsets before, it's really easy to get motion sickness. I tried one of the Google Daydream headsets several years ago, and they had us at the time sitting on like a stool that swiveled, and we were swimming through the ocean, and I got really weird and I fell off the chair because you're sort of moving around and you've got this thing on your head, and it gets quite disorientating. So they want to make sure that you're designing comfortable interactions with seated, standing, reclining experiences, and stop that motion sickness. And allow those users to choose between virtual or real worlds or whatever else will make them feel more comfortable. Of course, accessibility is super important, and also design for both direct and distance interactions. As I'll show in a bit, you can have items at different viewpoints. So you can go and walk up to an item and interact with it, or interact with something further away. So we want to have variety in our interactions. And of course, consider that multimodal input I talked about before. Some of the concepts and terminology that we're going to talk about, very basic, I'm not going to go into it too deeply. We have two different modes. We have home space mode and full space mode. So home space is where we can have multiple apps running side by side and allows the user to multitask, similar to the desktop on your computer. And your apps can be run in home space mode without the modification. So that's just putting items, squares, essentially apps in space, tiled around the room. You can move them around and even assign them to various surfaces so that you can have your apps sitting on a surface and move around the space, and they'll stay where they are. We then have full space mode. This is where we have one app running at a time, and it takes over the entire view. So there's no boundaries, and it's just for that particular app. You have to do additional work in order to make this work, but you are given a lot more additional capabilities as well. When we're in home space mode, your app will be contained within a single panel. For full space mode, you can have multiple panels, and you can move them all around. So here's home space mode, and then full space mode here. We can see multiple panels. We also have the concepts of spatial panels and subspaces. So spatial panels are the container elements that serve as the building blocks, and then subspaces are partitions of the 3D space. So you can build your 3D elements and your 3D layouts within these subspaces. It gets a bit tricky, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it enables you to do that thing where you're pinning things to a particular surface and allows you to add that depth. So you can have subspaces that are further away and subspaces that are closer. When you're running a non-XR device, so your phone or your tablet, the subspace composables never get rendered. So it means you can have specific XR content in there, but it'll never get shown on your app. But when you're running on that XR device in full space mode, that's when those items will get shown. Positioning, as I mentioned, you can move these around and they'll stay in place. And I'll demonstrate this in a moment. And you can anchor panels to the real world, which I think will be pretty cool. There's also the concept of orbiters, and these are attached to a specific spatial panel, and it can be used for things like navigation and contextual actions, and I'll show that in my demo. Let's see that right now. Let's hope the demo gods are with me. All right, so I wanted to do a little demo and just show a really simple app and see if I could turn it into an XR app pretty easily. And I thought, okay, what's something that would be really useful to have on my face while I use it while I'm speaking to you now? It would be my speaker notes, of course. So it'd be really cool right now if I had some speaker notes and I could see them and read them. If I had some really cool glasses, that would be really useful. So I built a speaker notes app. Very, very basic. It doesn't do very much at the moment. Hopefully I can turn it into a real app. But I made this app. So it's a phone app. It's got a bunch of talks. I can click on these. I can see my speaker notes for this particular talk. In this particular talk, I don't get to use slides, so there's a lot of speaker notes. We can see I can increase the text size, and I've got a timer down the bottom. So I could run this, and I would know what's going on. But of course, I don't want to be standing here with my phone in front of me while I'm talking to you. So I could also try that with a tablet, maybe. That would be pretty cool, me holding a tablet in front of my face, yeah? So this one, we've got a tablet view. When I click on this, I have my speaker notes come up to the side. Pretty straightforward, same functionality here as well. Now, I want to make this app for XR. So I can launch this in a XR emulator. So here, we're in home space mode. So my app is right here. We can see that it's using the same version that is used for the tablet version, is being used in XR. If I didn't have that tablet version, it would have used the phone version, but it's chosen the tablet one. So it's just sitting in space. I could also open other apps as well. I can sort of move it around a little bit like this. If I decide that I want to be able to see through to my imagined lounge room, we could do this, and we can still move it around in the space. So I could then play around with it and make it easy to see. So if we can imagine that I had this on my face, I'd be seeing a really big box right in the middle of my view. not exactly what we want. Even if I put it off to the side, it would be a little bit hard for me to see and be able to speak to you naturally. So if we want to go to full space mode, so I can click into here and we'll open full space mode. So instead of opening the same version that the tablet had, it's now opened different subspaces. So these were technically not shown in that tablet version, but they're shown here. So now I have multiple panels I can move around. So these are separate, so I can move my text size control. I don't really need to see that while I'm doing my demonstration. But as I'm changing this, you can see that that it's still interacting with these other panels. I can move this panel off to the side. That looks pretty good. I can also resize this a lot easier. That's good. Although the text size doesn't work for that particularly well. And we can see we have the orbiter at the bottom. So this orbiter here, I can see my time counting up here. But I can move these to be a bit more natural when I'm speaking. I can scroll with this. I would where is it? Oh yeah, this way. Got to remember, there's different gestures you have to use on the emulator. Oh, maybe it's not working today. The emulator is quite flaky. But what I would be interested with this next is learning about the eye tracking. There's no documentation about this yet, but I'd really like to be able to change the slides with eye tracking, but we'll get there. So we can see that this took me about 2 hours to do, to make the whole app completely. The changes for adding these special full space modes were pretty easy. You essentially just put extra code inside inside some areas. Let me see if I can do a little quick demonstration of that. Where are they? So we can see here in the main screen, hide that. We have different subspaces here, subspace, spatial row. So these ones will get shown in the full space mode in XR, but won't be shown in regular app or for phone or tablet. They'll just be removed completely. But I won't go too much into these details. Back into my demonstration deck. Here we go. So some of the takeaways from doing some of this development. It was a lot easier to develop for Android XR than it was for widgets or for Android Wear, if you've seen some of my other talks. I could use native Jetpack Compose. There was no special imports, which is a bit of a problem with widgets and Wear if you've played with those. XR emulator is a bit flaky. That scroll was working in the previous version. It's not working now. I don't know why. The documentation, there's a lot of theory documentation, but there's very few practical examples, at least the last time I checked. Hopefully we see more of this after Google I/O. And the things I'm really keen to find out more about, as I mentioned, eye tracking. I'm very keen on the glasses and playing with the 3D space. I think that's going to be super interesting for the future. Whole bunch of resources if you want to take a look at any of the videos or examples I shared. Any questions? Yes, I didn't do that yet, but yes, you can. I didn't do it because it's a bit hard for the screens. But yeah, you can add transparency. You can just add it like any other UI. Colours, anything like, yeah. Anything else? But that would not be the case for the home space mode, only for free full space, yeah. Susie? Can we get the device? I just want it to be announced, the device. I would love to get a free device, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to free. If history has taught us anything, these things are going to go for thousands of dollars. So get ready to take out a loan. Awesome. Thanks very much.